Suppression of freedom. Suppression of freedom is known as the action used to stop people from expressing their thoughts or ideas in any way, shape, or form. It's often common in the Middle East. According to the Middle East Monitor, there are 2,613 prisoners of conscience only in Saudi Arabia alone, though many human rights activists confirm that there are possibly more than 20,000 people whose freedom of speech is silenced either by arresting them for non-violent charges or in some cases killing them. Although, when people take advantage of freedom of speech in order to spread hate speech or cyberbullying and extremist idea, it should be suppressed to keep safety in society. In this video, the main focus is going to be about to what extent can government silence or suppress people who speaks out against them, and when they should be suppressing freedom of speech for a good cause. So the main focus will be about the ways used to suppress people in the Middle East particularly, as well as the reasons behind this suppression. So to what extent is suppression of freedom common in the Middle East? It has gone to a really far extent where people will be arrested just for making funny videos that may mock the government or talk about things like the corruption and the social life issues like government being such a capitalist taking over people's money, or things like not allowing much freedom of speech, in fact not even allowing it to be exposed to the public. According to the CNN, there has been an American citizen in Dubai who has been arrested for doing that, and he was tortured shockingly all the time that he was in prison without even having any charge or having made any offense. In other case, that includes secret agent of the police or Egyptian police officer going onto gay and lesbian transgender dating apps or gay activist groups. They either pretend to like them or be an activist who care about their rights and then ask to meet them, and as soon as they have the opportunity they will arrest them and set up charges against them. Now let's talk more about Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia or United Arab Emirates, there are lots of human rights activists that's been arrested for a non-violent charge or no actual charges. For example, Sam Zamil, an activist that criticized the contract of the Saudi royal family with Aramco company. The second thing he knew, he was in jail with no trial. It's been almost a year or two since his arrest. The same story applies to Mariam al-Baluchi, an Emirates human rights activist and the cancer patient who was arrested with the charge of dishonoring the state, which is not even an actual charge, when all she have done is criticizing some of the government action against human rights and against freedom of speech. So you can see the link between all these three countries. Like whenever you have something or you criticize some laws, like for example the LGBTQ laws in Egypt, and people who criticize this have to always be hidden because they fear police officers. And she has, after this, the last thing that has been heard from Mariam is a leaked record explaining what she had gone through, and how she was denied medical access, how she's been there for 2 years now without even being seen by any doctors, which is a really just basically a crime against humanity. According to the Guardian, the patient in there has not been receiving any medical attentions. Even the other detainees in UAE or any of the mentioned countries has not been receiving any medical attention, which is concerning actually. So freedom of speech, which is the most basic right that every human right should encounter, but unfortunately that's not the case in the Middle East. Why is it important, some people say? Well, according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, freedom of speech is something that every human should have encountered. They have the right to say whatever they have in mind, despite their sex, color, race, or gender, and political opinion, or despite other things that they have or don't have, like priorities, birth, or status. Furthermore, no one should be subjected to torture based on any of their opinions, but yet this still has been violated. According to the CNN, almost half of the Human Rights Act violations happens in the mentioned countries, and it's all regarding the suppression of freedoms. So it's all being committed to stop people from being able to say anything. And that's just not the case. Like, even before the Human Universal Declaration, many religious beliefs has approved the idea of freedom of speech. For example, Christianity, Judaism, as well as Islam, they all have talked in some idea or another about the free speech, that people should be able to say what they want. But yet this still continues, with over 800 prisoners only in United Arab Emirates alone, and the number still rise up and rise up even more, because all the human rights organizations are doing is condemning the action, not even doing an actual step or taking an actual step to actually stop this from happening. So it's just condemning the action, which is a shame on this organization which claims to be a human rights organization. So as mentioned, this is pretty much common in the Middle Eastern countries, and one of the countries that we haven't mentioned in there actually is Syria, where people have said in prison and they being put there just for their opinions as well. And you can see the link between all these countries. They all arresting people due to political opinions. So all of these people have to be hidden. They have to speak in secret. They have to always avoid new members, which make them like go under lots of pressure, being afraid of being arrested or tortured or possibly killed. And there are lots of human rights violations. For those who ask what human rights violations are being committed in order to suppress freedom of speech, well, there is a lot of them, and especially in non-democratic societies, something like killing people, something like torture, the violation of Article 7 and Article 19 of the human rights violation, the violation of many other articles that states that people should have the right to express their ideas in any way, shape, or form, as long as they don't offend anyone. So democratic society thinking of thoughts of freedom of speech. According to the Middle East Monitor, democratic society, especially Scandinavian countries, have so much freedom of speech that doesn't exist in the Middle East countries. For example, countries like Germany or some countries like Sweden or Denmark, they wouldn't just arrest or kill people for criticizing them. Instead, they will accept the criticism and see what they have done wrong. But it's not always that case in the first world countries. For example, according to the ABC agency, who leaked a document that talks about the Australian Troops Act in Afghanistan, it faced like lots of condemning by the politician, considering it as a government secret and trying to hide it. And they shouldn't do that, because like it's free, they expressing some facts, because at the end the ABC news agency is just expressing fact. But you can see there's lots of difference when it comes to the freedom of speech between the Middle East and the Scandinavian community. For example, like countries like Germany, Sweden, or Denmark, as we mentioned, they wouldn't do that. But countries like Saudi, they will end up anyone who does it, like they ended up with Jamal Khashoggi, killing them in the embassy, or like they ended up so many other opponents, taking them back home and torturing them or forcing them to be in their house arrest. After the case of Jamal Khashoggi, many human rights activists feel unsafe to express their ideas, though the Association of Press Freedom signed a petition demanding that journalists should be protected according to them. But it's still like, even when they're doing that, they're still being killed just to try to suppress their speaking out against anyone or anyhow matters that, or just telling it to the outside world in general. But there comes a problem with the first world country freedom of speech. Some people in the first world country take advantage of freedom of speech in order to express something like hate speech, as we mentioned. One of these people is known as Tommy Robinson, which I think many of you have heard of. If you haven't heard of Tommy Robinson, he is a right-wing activist who always spread hate speech about the Islamic community in Britain or the refugee community, mostly the Syrian refugee community. One of the things about that guy is he has that famous phrase, according to his web page, Facebook page, and according to The Guardian, he has his famous phrase, "What is freedom of speech?" And when he talks about freedom of speech, he considers what he is doing as freedom of speech when it's literally harming society. He came up with so many ideas that may harm society in some way or another, making them encouraged in order to do some acts against people from another religious minority or another ethnic groups, such as Muslims in Britain, such as the refugee community in there as well. And it has happened. For example, one of the things that happened is Punch a Muslim Day, which is a competition adopted by the British people, and it got like so much popularity in there. People start going throwing eggs at Muslims, start taking off their hijabs, and it just like harmed society because of this guy. And here is when it's good to suppress freedom of speech. Basically, in these cases, there are certain things that should be suppressed. For example, if you see a ISIS war propaganda videos, they claim that's a freedom of speech. No, it's not. It's definitely on the no-no list, because things like that may harm society in some way or another, making some Europeans joining ISIS. According to the Daily Mail, many of the Europeans who saw these videos got inspired and just went to join, which caused serious harm to these people and for their families, because it spread the extremist idea. Hence, people just end up flying to Syria or to Iraq to join these terrorist organizations. And one of these cases is recently the British girl who flew to Syria and then asked to be brought back, but she was refused and stripped away from her citizenship. Another story to conclude with is the story of 22 of July massacre, when two people from the far-right anti-Semitism movement known as the Left Wolf planned the bomb in Otaya, Oslo, Norway, and another person did a mass shooting in there as well, killed so many people. So that's another reason why freedom of speech should be suppressed if it caused harm to society. Thank you for watching this video, hope you enjoyed it. There is the reference at the end. Thank you very much.